Hey everybody, it's Ben and I'm back once again with another video for you guys. Today I'll be reviewing Alan Moore's Saga of the Swamp Thing, Book 2. The series is written by Alan Moore and illustrated by Stephen Bissett, and the second volume collects issues 28 through 34 of the series, plus the annual number 2. We have a couple of guest artists on this second volume. We have Sean McManus, who does the artwork for issues 28 and 32. We also have Rick Veitch, who does the artwork for issue 31. The inking continues to be done by John Tartleban, but we also have a guest inker by the name of Alfredo Alcala, who's a name you may recognise from John Constantine Hellblazer, who comes on board to do the inking for issue 30. And the colouring continues to be done by Tatiana Wood, and the series is published by DC Comics. Now the first issue in this volume follows Swamp Thing as he goes back to the place where it all began for him as a character, and that is back to the former home of Alec Holland, and back to the fatal events which led up to Holland eventually becoming the Swamp Thing. But with Alan Moore's take on the origin, as I said in my review of Book 1, whereas we thought Alec Holland was thrown into the swamp, and his flame-engulfed body was bonded with the biorestorative formula which Holland was working on at the time, being a botanist, and he emerged as a Swamp Thing. In Alan Moore's take on the origin, it was the swamp matter that bonded with the biorestorative formula and created the Swamp Thing with the memories and the consciousness, and it was a living humanoid plant essentially, which thought it was Alec Holland because it had his consciousness and his memories. But there's a really endearing scene where Swamp Thing recovers the skeletal remains of Alec Holland and gives the character a proper burial, and as you can see from the final few panels, there's the ghostly outline of Alec Holland smiling after his burial, knowing that he's finally able to move on from the land of the dead, and he eventually goes to heaven. This second volume also features the reappearance of Swamp Thing's arch nemesis, Anton Arcane, which we see here. Alan Moore does a really great job of conveying just how evil Anton Arcane is, from a dialogue exchange that he shares with Swamp Thing, which I'll go on to in a moment. With issue 31, the series underwent a small title change, and that was Saga of the Swamp Thing, Sophisticated Suspense, which it's a bit more darker than the general DC Comics, and is more in line with the Vertigo-esque, or the Vertigo titles that predated the Vertigo line, as Karen Berger was the one of the editors on this series, and she eventually launched the Vertigo line. She was actually the senior vice president and the executive editor of Vertigo, which spawned such titles as Neil Gaiman's Sandman, John Constantine Hellblazer, the latter half of Alan Moore's Saga of the Swamp Thing run. Other examples include Jason Aaron's Scalped, which I know is much later, but again it's a Vertigo title. Fables, American Vampire, you get the idea. Well, anyway, the line which I read out to you from Anton Arcane is, "I ripped her soul from her, and it pulsed in my hands, milk white and translucent, and then I hurled it down into the deepest sewers of the afterworld, just to hear it scream." So essentially what Anton Arcane has done is he's not only killed his niece, which is Abigail Cabal, which is Swamp Thing's love interest slash girlfriend, if you will, but he's also thrown her soul down into the deepest, darkest pits of hell. And there's a great, albeit a brief, fight scene which takes place between Swamp Thing and Arcane, which ends with Arcane being thrown back into the darkest pits of hell where he belongs, as you can see there. Stephen Bassett's artwork continues to be absolutely fantastic, coupled with the equally on par inking of John Toddleben and the colouring of Tatiana Wood. And we then move into the annual number 2, where Swamp Thing uses his ability to basically exit his body, and he goes into the green for a few moments, but then he goes beyond the real world and the green, and he goes to, eventually he journeys to hell to rescue Abby's soul. On the way, he meets some other really cool DC Universe characters, such as Boston Brand, aka Deadman, as you can see there. He also meets up with the Phantom Stranger, as you can see there, who accompanies Swamp Thing to a western slope in heaven, as they both journey there to look for Abigail's soul. And then we have another really cool guest appearance by Jim Corrigan, aka the Spectre, as you can see there. So I'm going past this a bit quick, as you can see there. And we also have another really cool guest appearance by a character who appeared in the first volume, and that is the demon Etrigan, as you can see there. And he accompanies Swamp Thing to the darkest pits of hell. Alan Moore has a really great voice for, not only for Swamp Thing, as I said in my review of the first volume, or book 1 if you will, but also all of the supporting cast and the characters that show up, even if they're just characters who feature in guest appearances, such as Etrigan, the Phantom Stranger, Deadman, etc. And there's a really great dialogue exchange which takes place between Arcane and Swamp Thing, where Arcane asks him, "Before you go, tell me, how many years have I been here?" To which Swamp Thing just turns around and says, "You've only been here since yesterday," which very clearly drives Anton Arcane pretty crazy. And there's also another great scene where Swampy and Etrigan team up against Hell's Legions, even, as Swamp Thing attempts to rescue Abigail's soul, which he eventually does, as you can see there. I have to say the annual number 2 is definitely a highlight in this volume for me, in terms of a single issue story, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, issue 32 is called Pog. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a really well written and illustrated issue, but it feels a little bit out of place in terms of this overall volume and the stories that take place in it. But I think it might be one of those issues that I might need to go back and reread for a second time, just to get to grips with it properly and see what significance it bears in terms of the overall volume. Don't get me wrong, like I said, it's not a bad story by any means. It just feels a little bit out of place in terms of the events that conspire, or transpire I should say, in terms of the overall stories. And then issue 33 features a really cool homage cover to House of Secrets issue 92, which many diehard Swamp Thing fans will know is Swamp Thing's first appearance, which is written by Len Wein and illustrated by Bernie Wrightson. And pages, let me just check because I don't want to get the pages wrong. Pages 182 to 189 features some of the pages from House of Secrets issue 92, which is the telling of the original first appearance and the original origin, if you will, of Swamp Thing, as you can see there and there. Even Bernie Wrightson's early artwork before he went on to collaborate with Len Wein on the initial 10 issues of the original Swamp Thing series is absolutely fantastic, and the writing by Len Wein is pretty great as well, considering that this is my first exposure to the two of them as a creative team. And with the final issue, issue 34 of this volume, I'm not ashamed to admit that when I read this issue, I did feel generally emotional whilst reading it. And I did feel as if I was going to shed some tears because of just how beautifully written and illustrated this issue is by Alan Moore and Stephen Bissett, and also, like I said, John Tottleben and Tatiana Wood on the inking and the colouring. This issue basically brings the relationship between Abby and Swamp Thing full circle, and the two of them decide to start a relationship together. The writing and the storytelling in this by Alan Moore continues to be absolutely stellar and absolutely fantastic, coupled with the equally on par artwork of Stephen Bissett, Rick Veitch and Sean McManus, and also the inking of John Tottleben, Alfredo Alcala, and the colouring by Tatiana Wood. If you're a fan of Alan Moore, if you're a fan of Swamp Thing, if you're a fan of DC Comics or horror comics, or just a fan of really, really well told stories, both from a writing and an artwork point of view, I cannot recommend Alan Moore's Saga the Swamp Thing enough. If I had to give this second volume or book to a rating, I'd give it an absolute 5 out of 5. I really, really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. And that about concludes this review video, guys. Thank you everybody for watching. Hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Didn't like it, thumbs it down. But as I always say, if you thumbs down the video, please feel free to tell me why in the comments below, or send me a private message. As always, feel free to leave a comment. If you're new, please feel free to subscribe. And until next time, this is Gambit896 signing off, and I'll see you guys next time. And as always, remember, keep reading those comics. Take care, guys.